The sound of the auctioneer's gavel echoed through the dusty hall, each strike reverberating in Nolan's chest. Standing at the back, he felt his heart race as the bidding escalated. A vintage 1959 Chevy truck sitting at the front, glimmering under the fluorescent lights. It was more than just a truck. It was a piece of history he had dreamed of owning. The crowd around him surged with excitement, voices rising like a symphony of anticipation, while he clutched his bid card tightly. He could almost feel the weight of his grandfather's legacy pressing down on him, urging him to take a chance. As the gavel finally fell, sealing his victory, he could hardly contain his excitement. A rush of adrenaline coursed through him, flooding his mind with visions of cruising down the open road, wind whipping through his hair, and the roar of the engine beneath him. It was a dream, realized, yet it flickered like a candle caught in a draft. But as he approached the truck, his heart sank. The glimmering surface belied the deep cracks and rust patches that cloaked its once vibrant paint. Memories of summers spent in his grandfather's garage sprang to life. Long afternoons spent learning how to fix up old engines and the smell of motor oil mixing with the warm air. He took a deep breath, shaking off the doubts that swirled in his mind, and climbed into the cab. The worn leather seat embraced him, and as his hands brushed over the steering wheel, he felt the ghostly presence of its past, the stories it could tell if only it could speak. The promise of restoration flickered in his mind, but it was the toolbox, wedged snugly in the bed, that called to him. It seemed out of place amidst the celebration of victory, as if it carried a weight of its own, a secret yearning to be uncovered. With trembling hands he pried it open, the hinges creaking like an old man awakening from a long slumber. Inside lay an assortment of tools, all coated in a layer of dust, but it was the items nestled beneath that caught his eye. Old union pins glinted in the dim light, their brass surfaces tarnished yet still telling stories of solidarity and struggle. A neatly folded flag in a triangle, creased and worn, hinted at sacrifices made long ago. Sacrifices etched into the hearts of those who had come before him. Amidst these relics, a crumpled receipt lay tucked away. "I, supervisor, owe 2 hours a day for 3 months for hope unpaid." The signature sent chills down his spine. It was a familiar name from the photograph in his grandfather's old toolbox. His grandfather had worked on the assembly line where this truck was born, and now Nolan held a piece of that history in his trembling hands, a connection to a past he had only ever heard about. The moment was overwhelming, a tidal wave of emotions crashing over him. Memories of his grandfather's stories filled his mind, of camaraderie amidst the noise of machines and the smell of oil. Laughter and victories danced in his thoughts, but so did the losses. Standing in the present, he felt the weight of unfinished stories, of conversations never completed and lessons left unlearned. The air was thick with nostalgia, and he wondered if he was ready to dive into the depths of what this truck truly represented. Nolan stood beside the truck, his heart still racing from the auction, but now it was the weight of history that pressed heavily on his shoulders. He felt the sun warming his skin as he turned away from the hall, the golden light spilling over the Oklahoma landscape and illuminating the dust kicked up by his boots. The air was thick with the distant sounds of cicadas buzzing and the faint echo of laughter from the auction crowd trailing behind him. Yet it felt different now, as if the world had shifted the moment he laid hands on that toolbox. Driving home, he could feel the truck's presence in every bump of the dirt road, a constant reminder of what he had unearthed. Memories flitted through his mind like leaves caught in a gentle breeze. His grandfather, a hard-working man with calloused hands and a generous heart. He could still hear his voice, rich with stories of his youth, tales of sweat and sacrifice, of a time when the American dream felt tangible and real. Those stories had been woven into the fabric of his childhood, shaping his understanding of hard work, community, and the importance of remembering where one came from. Nolan's modest home, with its white picket fence and garden struggling to bloom under the Oklahoma sun, welcomed him as he parked the truck next to his garage. He glanced up at the faded blue sky, tightly laced with strands of white clouds. It felt like the perfect day for reflection, a perfect day to think about what lay ahead. He opened the garage door, revealing his sanctuary, a place filled with tools, half-finished projects, and the scent of sawdust. Every square inch was a testament to his love for mechanics and restoration. He had spent countless weekends restoring old bikes, repairing small engines, and dreaming of the day he could take on a bigger project. Now, that project stood before him, shimmering with potential and burdened with expectations. The toolbox rested heavily in the bed of the truck, and he hesitated before reaching for it, the memories of the auction still fresh. The sight of it stirred something deep within him, a blend of excitement and trepidation. He had envisioned polishing the truck until it gleamed, showcasing it at car shows, savoring the admiration of fellow collectors. But as he unlatched it and opened the lid, a sense of responsibility washed over him, drowning out the thrill of ownership. Nolan sat down on the edge of the bed, the toolbox perched on his knees. The tools inside were old but sturdy, each one telling a story of its own. He ran his fingers over them, imagining the hands that had used them, the lives they had shaped. But it was the other items that truly captivated him, the union pins and the folded flag. They seemed to pulse with history, and he felt a pang in his chest, an echo of his grandfather's words about loyalty and sacrifice. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the garage, Nolan pulled out the crumpled receipt. The ink was faded, but the words were clear. I, supervisor, owe 2 hours a day for 3 months, for hope unpaid. He had never learned about this part of his grandfather's life, and it gnawed at him. What had his grandfather endured? What had he fought for? The questions spiraled in his mind like leaves caught in a whirlpool. He leaned back against the truck, letting the cool metal ground him. The weight of the receipt was heavy, and he felt its implications sink in deeper. It was more than just a piece of paper. It was a fragment of a life devoted to labor, commitment, and camaraderie. The longing to learn more and understand the stories behind these relics grew stronger, intertwining with the nostalgia that enveloped him. That night, as he lay in bed, the shadows danced on the walls, twisting and turning as the moonlight filtered through the window. Nolan couldn't shake the feeling of being called to something greater than himself. He had the truck, yes, but it felt like there was a purpose behind it, an obligation to honor the past, to connect with those who had come before him. The thought tugged at his heart, igniting a sense of urgency that he couldn't ignore. Days turned into weeks, and the truck sat in his garage, a stunning relic that felt more like a burden with each passing day. Nolan found himself staring at the toolbox, the dust settling like the weight of memory. He recalled his grandfather's words, "Sometimes you don't just owe time, you owe your heart." It felt as if the universe was nudging him, urging him to dig deeper, to uncover the stories hidden within the items. One afternoon, as he polished the truck's chrome bumper, he felt a strange sense of kinship with it. Each stroke of the cloth brought forth not only the shine of the metal, but also the residue of forgotten memories. It was then that he made a decision. He would visit the local union hall, return the union pins and the folded flag. Perhaps he could find a way to honor those who had sacrificed for a better future. The thought of opening a box of memories in an empty auditorium filled him with a sense of dread and responsibility, but he knew he had to do it. As he drove toward the union hall, the sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the landscape. The building loomed ahead, sturdy and proud, its walls echoing with the laughter and grief of generations. Nolan parked and stepped outside, taking a deep breath. The familiar scent of old wood and oil enveloped him. A tangible reminder of the past and the gravity of his decision weighed heavily on his heart. Inside, he was met with a mixture of curious glances and warm smiles. Familiar faces turned toward him, people he had known all his life, yet he felt a distance between them, a chasm formed by years of unspoken stories. Conversations paused, and every pair of eyes turned to him. Nolan felt the heat rise in his cheeks, but he steeled himself. "Excuse me," he began, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "I found something that belongs here." The silence that followed felt heavy, yet hopeful, as he laid the items before the gathered crowd. The Union pins sparkled under the fluorescent lights, and the folded flag seemed to breathe as if it were awakening from a long slumber. A collective murmur rose, and Nolan watched as faces softened, eyes glistening with recognition. He could see the gears turning in their minds, memories surfacing like ships from the depths of a forgotten ocean. "These belong to my grandfather," he continued, his heart racing. "He worked on the assembly line where this truck was born. I believe they belong to all of you, to the history we share." As he spoke, the tension in the room shifted, transforming from silence to understanding. Nolan felt a warmth wash over him, a sense of belonging in a community that had once felt distant. In that moment, he understood. Sometimes the past isn't just something you collect, it's a legacy you honor. The discussions that ensued were filled with laughter and nostalgia, but also a sense of solemnity. Nolan listened as stories poured forth, spoken with reverence. Tales of hardships, camaraderie, and unyielding spirit echoed through the hall, weaving together the fabric of shared experiences. As he absorbed their words, he found himself enveloped in a sense of connection he had longed for. An older gentleman, with silver hair and a voice that trembled with age, stepped forward. "Your grandfather was a good man," he said, his eyes reflecting a glimmer of respect. "He stood for the workers, fought for our rights. We owe him much." Nolan felt a swell of pride mixed with grief. He had never truly understood the depth of his grandfather's impact, and it brought tears to his eyes. Another woman chimed in, her voice soft yet firm. "He inspired many of us to keep going, to stand strong. He believed in solidarity." Each word resonated with Nolan, weaving a tapestry of courage and commitment that spanned generations. The items he had brought were not just relics. They were tokens of respect, reminders of struggles fought together. As the sun set outside, casting a warm glow through the windows, Nolan felt a profound shift within him. He realized that the truck was not merely an object to be displayed. It was a vessel for stories, a connection to a rich history that needed to be honored. The past was alive in this room, vibrating with the memories of those who had come before him. When it was finally time to leave, the wind picked up, rustling the leaves outside, a gentle sigh of approval. Nolan stepped back outside, the sun setting behind him, streaks of orange and pink painting the sky. He felt lighter, unburdened by the weight of history he had carried for so long. In his heart, he felt the tremor of a decision made. He had chosen to listen, to engage with a story that had long awaited its turn to be told. As he climbed into the truck, he knew it was no longer just a vehicle. It was now a vessel of memories, a bridge connecting him to the past and a pathway to the future. The engine roared to life, and as he drove away, the open road beckoned him forward, promising new adventures and the chance to keep those stories alive. He could almost hear his grandfather's voice guiding him, reminding him that the journey was as important as the destination. Nolan drove through the quiet streets of his small town, the headlights cutting through the dusk. He felt invigorated, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. This was more than a simple restoration. It was about preserving a legacy and finding his place within that narrative. Each stoplight felt like an opportunity for reflection, a moment to appreciate the significance of the journey he was embarking on. Pulling into his driveway, Nolan parked the truck and sat for a moment, taking in the familiar surroundings. The flowers in his garden swayed gently in the evening breeze, their colors vibrant even as the day faded into night. He thoughtfully glanced back at the truck, its silhouette stark against the twilight, and felt a deep sense of connection to the stories it carried. That night, as he lay in bed, he thought about the conversations he had had at the Union Hall, the shared laughter, the memories, and the overwhelming sense of community. He knew he couldn't keep the stories to himself. They needed to be shared, celebrated, and remembered. The truck was not just a means of transportation, it was a symbol of resilience and hope, a testament to the lives of those who had come before him. In the days that followed, Nolan began to plan how he would honor his grandfather's legacy. He reached out to local historians asking if he could collaborate on a project that would bring the stories of the workers to life. He envisioned a small exhibit at the community center, showcasing not only the truck but also the stories of those who had worked alongside his grandfather, celebrating their contributions and sacrifices. As he worked on organizing the event, he felt a surge of purpose. Each phone call, each conversation brought him closer to his goal. The community was eager to contribute, sharing old photographs, documents, and tales that had long been buried. Nolan realized that this was not just about his grandfather. It was about the collective memory of a community that had once thrived on hard work and unity. On the day of the exhibit, the community center buzzed with energy. Nolan stood in front of the truck, now polished and gleaming, adorned with photographs and artifacts that told a story of resilience. Friends, family, and neighbors gathered, their eyes sparkling with anticipation as they shared their own memories. The room was filled with laughter, and the air buzzed with the spirit of camaraderie that Nolan had hoped for. As the sun dipped low, casting a warm glow over the gathering, Nolan took a moment to reflect. He understood in that instant what it truly meant to honor a legacy. It was about connection, remembrance, and the strength found in community. He felt his grandfather's presence beside him, as if he was there in spirit, proud of the journey Nolan had undertaken. The evening was a success, with stories shared and laughter echoing through the halls. People left with a renewed sense of pride in their shared history, and Nolan's heart swelled with joy. The truck, once a mere object, had transformed into a beacon of hope, a reminder that the past was alive and well, woven into the fabric of their lives. As he closed up the community center that night, he reflected on the path that had led him here. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the echoes of the stories he had helped to tell. He felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him, knowing that the legacy of his grandfather, and all those who had come before, would continue to inspire future generations. Driving home that night, the stars twinkled overhead, a reminder of the countless stories waiting to be discovered. Nolan smiled, feeling a newfound purpose settle in his heart. The truck sat proudly in his driveway, and as he climbed into bed, he knew that his journey was just beginning. He was ready to listen, to learn, and to carry forward the legacy of those who had shaped his past, all while forging his own path into the future. As the days turned into weeks, the excitement surrounding the exhibit began to ripple through the community. Nolan felt himself become a part of something larger than he ever anticipated. Every conversation, every story shared further, deepened his understanding of the lives intertwined with his grandfather's legacy. He found himself visiting the local diner more frequently, a gathering spot where locals recounted their own memories, their laughter echoing against the checkered tiles and the smell of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the buttery scent of pancakes. One afternoon, while nursing a cup of coffee at the diner, he overheard a group in the corner discussing the upcoming exhibit. Their voices were animated as they reminisced about the days spent working on the assembly line alongside his grandfather. Nolan's heart raced. He had not expected such enthusiasm from those who had been directly affected by the stories he was trying to honor. With every word shared, he felt a growing responsibility to accurately capture their experiences. "Did you hear Nolan's putting up that exhibit?" one man said, his face lighting up with nostalgia. "I remember your granddad like he was yesterday. Stronger than an ox, that man, always ready to lend a hand." Nolan found himself leaning closer, eager to absorb the tales of his grandfather's generosity, his strength, and his unwavering commitment to his coworkers. Memories cascaded around him, and he knew he had to document them. He took out his notebook and penned down snippets of what he heard, capturing the essence of those conversations, the laughter, and the solemn moments that accompanied their shared history. Over the next few weeks, Nolan became a fixture at the diner, transforming his coffee breaks into informal interviews. He slipped into conversations about the past, encouraging those around him to share their stories. Old photographs were passed around like treasures, and he witnessed the joy and pride in their eyes as they recalled the days of camaraderie and teamwork. He learned about the challenges they faced, from labor strikes to the thrill of seeing their hard work come to fruition. Each story was a thread that wove together the fabric of a community built on shared struggle and triumph. As the exhibit date approached, he spent long hours in his garage, preparing the truck and gathering artifacts. He meticulously cleaned the vintage Chevy, making it sparkle under the fluorescent lights. The act of restoration felt symbolic, a way of breathing life back into the past, while honoring the memories that surrounded it. The toolbox, with its dusty tools and relics, became a focal point of his exhibit. He wanted it to tell a story, not just of his grandfather, but of those who had fought alongside him. One evening, while sorting through the numerous items, Nolan came across a worn-out journal at the bottom of the toolbox. It had been hidden beneath layers of dust and other forgotten pieces. Curiosity piqued, he opened it to discover handwritten notes, sketches, and thoughts penned by his grandfather. The pages were filled with reflections on work, family, and dreams, an intimate glimpse into the man who had shaped Nolan's childhood. As he read, he felt as though he were stepping into his grandfather's shoes. He could see the world through his eyes, struggles and dreams intertwined. There were passages about the importance of community and standing together in the face of adversity. The entries were raw, filled with emotion and the wisdom born of experience. One entry struck him particularly hard. In the end, it's not just about the machines we build, but the lives we touch. Nolan felt a swell of emotion. He realized this journal was a precious gift, a window into the values that had been instilled in him. He made a decision then and there. He would include it in the exhibit, showcasing it as a centerpiece to share his grandfather's voice and spirit with the community. As the night of the exhibit drew closer, Nolan faced a whirlwind of emotions. Excitement mixed with anxiety. He wanted everything to be perfect. The community had invested their stories and memories into this project, and he felt a deep sense of responsibility to honor that trust. He spent late nights arranging photographs, crafting captions, and preparing his speech. The thought of sharing his grandfather's legacy with others filled him with both pride and trepidation. Finally, the day arrived. The community center buzzed with activity as volunteers helped him set up. Colorful banners hung from the walls and tables were filled with memorabilia, a timeline of labor struggles, photographs of smiles and sweaty brows, and snippets of shared triumphs. The truck gleamed proudly at the center of the room, a symbol of resilience and hope. Nolan stood back, taking in the scene. The energy was palpable. Families began to trickle in, some familiar faces, others new. As he greeted them, he felt the connection grow stronger, weaving through the fabric of their shared history. Laughter echoed and stories flowed as people reunited, reminiscing about past triumphs and shared struggles. When the clock struck 6, Nolan stepped up to the front of the room, his heart pounding in his chest. The space filled with eager faces, and he cleared his throat, feeling the weight of the moment settle upon him. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, his voice steady despite the nervous flutter in his stomach. "This exhibit is not just about my grandfather or this truck. It's about all of us, our shared history, our struggles, and our victories." He looked around the room, meeting the gazes of those who had poured their hearts into this project. Each photograph, every item here represents a story that deserves to be told. Together, we built a legacy, one forged in hard work and solidarity. As he spoke, he could see nods of agreement, smiles of recognition, and the gentle squeeze of hands as stories began to intertwine once again. He pulled out his grandfather's journal, holding it up for all to see. "This journal contains thoughts and reflections that I believe encapsulate the spirit of our community. It's a reminder that we are not just defined by our work, but by the bonds we create. I want to share some of its words with you tonight." Nolan read aloud a few passages, and the room fell silent as they listened to his grandfather's voice come to life through the pages. The responses were visceral. Tears glistened in some eyes while others smiled fondly, lost in their memories. He felt a sense of pride swell in his chest, knowing that he was honoring not just his grandfather but all those who had fought for their place in history. As the night unfolded, people began to share their own stories, inspired by the words he had just read. From the corner of the room, an older woman stood, her voice trembling slightly. "I remember your grandfather during the strikes," she said. "He stood tall, rallied us all to fight for our rights. He was a beacon of hope." More stories poured forth, tales of picket lines, moments of unity, and the bonds formed in the heat of struggle. Nolan listened intently, feeling the warmth of community envelop him. Each story added depth to the exhibit, creating a tapestry of resilience that spoke to the heart of their shared experience. As the evening wore on, laughter filled the air, and the mood transformed into one of celebration. Nolan felt a sense of harmony seep into his bones. This was what community felt like. The truck, the journal, the photographs, everything had come together in a way he had hoped, but never fully imagined. As the clock approached 10, Nolan stepped out for a breath of fresh air, the cool breeze welcoming him. He looked up at the stars, twinkling like diamonds against the dark canvas of the night sky. It struck him then, his grandfather's spirit lived on, not just in memories but in the stories that continued to be shared. Returning inside, he found a small group gathered around the truck, their voices low but animated. He approached them, curiosity piqued. The conversation turned toward the significance of the truck itself, and one man shared a story about how he had watched his father work on similar vehicles, weaving it into the tapestry of their own family history. "Your grandfather was a part of every shift, every late night," the man said. "He made sure we looked out for one another. It's not just a truck, Nolan. It's a reminder of who we are and where we come from." Emotion swelled within Nolan. The realization washed over him that every person in that room shared a piece of the story, all connected through sweat, labor, and love. The truck was indeed a catalyst for remembrance, a vessel that carried more than metal and paint. It carried the stories of lives lived, struggles faced, and victories won. As the night wound down, Nolan felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He had not only honored his grandfather's legacy, but had also woven his own story into the fabric of the community. The exhibit had breathed life into forgotten histories, reigniting the flames of solidarity and connection. In the days and weeks that followed, the exhibit continued to resonate within the community. The stories shared that night sparked conversations and connections that extended beyond the walls of the community center. Families began to reach out to one another, discovering their intertwined histories and the shared struggles that had shaped their town. Nolan found himself reflecting on the journey that had led him to this point. From the moment he had won the truck, he had embarked on a path that had not only deepened his connection to his grandfather, but also brought him closer to the very essence of his community. Each interaction became a thread, weaving a tapestry of resilience, hope, and solidarity. As he took his daily drive in the truck, he felt the weight of its history, the stories it carried. It was not just a vehicle to him anymore. It was a symbol of everything he had learned and the relationships he had forged. Every bump in the road seemed to echo with laughter, camaraderie, and memories waiting to be uncovered. One afternoon, as he drove through the small town, he spotted a familiar figure on the sidewalk. It was the older gentleman who had shared his memories at the exhibit. Nolan pulled over, rolling down the window. "Hey there," he called out, a smile spreading across his face. "How have you been?" The man approached the truck, his eyes shining with warmth. "I've been well, Nolan. Just reminiscing about the good old days." "Me too," Nolan replied, gesturing to the open passenger seat. "Want to take a drive?" Without hesitation, the man climbed in and they set off down the road. As they drove, they talked about their families, their experiences, and the lives they had built. The conversation flowed effortlessly, each shared memory binding them closer together. "Your grandfather taught us that community is everything," the man said. "He was our leader, our friend, and now you're carrying that torch forward." Nolan felt a swell of pride at the words. He realized that through sharing stories and memories, they were preserving the legacy that had shaped their lives. The truck was a vessel not just for stories from the past, but also for connections being forged in the present. As they rounded a bend, the sun dipped low in the sky, painting the horizon in shades of gold and orange. Nolan turned to his passenger, a smile on his face. "Thank you for sharing your stories with me. It means more than you know." The man nodded, eyes glistening with emotion. "No, thank you. You've brought us together again. We all needed this." Nolan drove on, buoyed by the shared memories and the connections being forged. He understood that the stories of the past were living entities, breathing and evolving as new generations came to know them. As they drove back toward town, Nolan felt a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that this journey was far from over. It was just beginning. The legacy of his grandfather, and all those who had come before, would continue to inspire him to listen, to learn, and to carry forward the stories that had shaped their lives. In the months that followed, the community embraced the exhibit's spirit, creating a shared history that transcended generations. Nolan's truck became a symbol of their collective resilience, a reminder of the bonds forged in labor and love. He held workshops to encourage others to share their stories, adopting a philosophy of storytelling as a means of preserving their history. The community rallied around these efforts, and soon, the small town was buzzing with anticipation for the next gathering, eager to recount the tales that had shaped their lives. Each story shared built upon the last, creating a rich tapestry of experiences that intertwined like the roots of a great tree. Nolan felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the journey he had embarked on, knowing that he was not just honoring his grandfather's legacy, but also helping others find their place within it. As seasons changed and the truck weathered the elements, it remained a steadfast reminder, a vessel of history, a bridge to the past, and a beacon for the future. Nolan understood that stories were meant to be shared, celebrated, and cherished, for they connected them all in profound ways. In the quiet moments, he often found himself reflecting on how a simple purchase had ignited a movement within his community. It reminded him that history was not just locked away in dusty books or forgotten corners. It lived within each person, waiting for someone to listen and share. And so, as Nolan continued to drive the streets of his hometown, he carried with him the stories of those who had come before him, the lessons learned, and the bonds formed, ready to weave the next chapter of their shared legacy. As the community continued to rally around Nolan's efforts, excitement buzzed in the air for an upcoming event he planned. Stories in the Sun. This gathering was meant to celebrate food, music, and the shared memories of families centered around the vintage 1959 Chevy truck that had become a symbol of their collective history. Nolan envisioned a warm and welcoming celebration, where everyone could come together to honor the past and create new connections. The day of the gathering dawned bright and clear, with the sun casting a warm glow over the community center. Nolan arrived early, setting up tables adorned with checkered tablecloths, arranging chairs in a semicircle around the truck, and placing coolers filled with lemonade and iced tea. The smell of grilled burgers wafted through the air as volunteers prepared the food, their laughter mingling with sizzling sounds from the grill. As people began to arrive, Nolan felt a surge of joy. Familiar faces greeted him with smiles, while newcomers joined in, eager to partake in the festivities. Children ran around, their laughter echoing, while adults caught up with one another, reminiscing about shared experiences. The atmosphere crackled with energy, and he could feel the community spirit building around him. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Nolan stepped up to the makeshift stage. The crowd quieted, eager to listen. "Today, we honor the legacy of those who came before us," he began, his voice steady with emotion. "This truck is not just metal, it is a testament to our resilience and the bonds we've forged." He invited others to share their stories, and one by one, individuals stepped up. An elderly woman shared her first day at the plant, recalling how Nolan's grandfather welcomed her with kindness. A man spoke of the camaraderie that blossomed during tough times, while laughter erupted as people recounted humorous anecdotes from their days on the assembly line. Each story wove another thread into the tapestry of their shared history. As the evening deepened, a local musician began to play heartfelt tunes on his guitar, and people gathered to listen. The soft melody wrapped around them, inviting reflection and connection. Nolan drifted toward the music, allowing the notes to wash over him. It was a moment of tranquility amid the joyful chaos, a reminder of the beauty of coming together as a community. As the night wore on, the glow of string lights illuminated the gathering, casting a warm ambiance. Nolan realized that he had created more than just an event. He had fostered a movement, a revival of memories and connections that had long been dormant. The truck, with its rich history, had served as a catalyst for this transformation. As the gathering began to wind down, people lingered, reluctant to leave the warmth of connection that had blossomed that day. Nolan stood by the truck, reflecting on how a simple purchase had ignited a movement within the community. The stories shared that night sparked conversations and connections that extended beyond the walls of the community center. Inspired by the success of the gathering, Nolan began to contemplate how to keep this momentum going. He envisioned a series of regular storytelling events where families could come together to share their experiences. He reached out to local schools, inviting students to participate and encouraging them to learn about their heritage through their families' stories. This initiative aimed to bridge the gap between generations, fostering understanding and connection. In the weeks that followed, Nolan organized a storytelling workshop at the local library, where he shared his passion for preserving history through narrative. He encouraged participants to bring artifacts and photographs that held significance in their lives. The response was overwhelming. Families dug through their attics, unearthing treasures long forgotten. Each item brought with it a story, and as the workshop unfolded, the room filled with laughter and tears. One particular session stood out to him. A young girl, no more than 10 years old, brought an old baseball glove that had belonged to her grandfather. She spoke shyly at first, but as she described how he had taught her to catch and throw, her confidence blossomed. "He always said I had to practice, or I'd never make it to the big leagues," she beamed. Her story resonated with everyone, reminding them of the bonds formed through shared activities and love. When Nolan asked if anyone else had similar experiences, hands shot up around the room, eager to share. He listened intently as stories flowed, each one enriching the collective memory of the group. He realized that these moments were transformational. Not only did they help to preserve personal histories, but they also created a powerful sense of community among those who participated. As the winter holidays approached, Nolan decided to host a special event, Stories by the Fire. He envisioned a cozy gathering where families could come together to share their stories, wrapped in blankets and sipping hot cocoa. It was about creating an intimate atmosphere that would highlight the importance of family traditions and the warmth of community during the colder months. The response was overwhelming. Families signed up to bring their favorite holiday dishes, and local musicians offered to play festive tunes. On the night of the event, the community center was transformed into a winter wonderland adorned with twinkling lights and welcoming decorations. Nolan arrived early to set up, the scent of cinnamon and pine filling the air. As families began to trickle in, he welcomed each person with warmth, feeling the excitement that permeated the room. As the night unfolded, stories of holiday traditions and cherished memories were shared around small tables adorned with festive treats. Nolan listened intently, feeling the warmth of their shared histories envelop him. One family spoke of their tradition of gathering to bake cookies each year, while another recounted their annual journey to cut down the perfect Christmas tree. Each story was a thread woven into the larger tapestry of their community. Later, as families gathered around a crackling fire, Nolan prepared to share his own story. He spoke of the journey he had embarked on since acquiring the truck, the incredible stories he had collected, and how it had transformed his understanding of his grandfather's legacy. His voice trembled with emotion as he recounted the moments of connection he had experienced and how he had come to see the importance of storytelling within the community. As he shared, he could see the faces of those gathered, reflecting a range of emotions: anticipation, nostalgia, and even a sense of pride. When he finished, the room erupted in applause and he felt a swell of gratitude wash over him. This was more than just an event. It was a celebration of their interconnected lives, a recognition of the legacy that had been passed down through generations. As the evening concluded, laughter filled the air and people began to share their own stories. The glow from the fire illuminated the faces of those present, each capturing the spirit of connection that had grown over the past months. Nolan felt a sense of peace settle in his heart, knowing that the legacy of his grandfather and all those who had come before would continue to inspire future generations. On the way home, as the stars twinkled overhead, Nolan reflected on how far they had come. The truck was not just a vehicle. It had become a vessel of history and a bridge connecting past, present, and future. He understood that stories were waiting to be told, nurtured, and passed down, a living testament to the resilience of their community. In the months that followed, the storytelling gatherings became a cherished tradition. Families continued to share their histories and new connections blossomed. Nolan realized that by fostering a culture of storytelling, he had not only honored his grandfather's legacy, but also created a space where memories could thrive, bringing the community closer together. As the seasons changed, Nolan looked forward to what lay ahead. He was ready to embrace the next chapter of their shared story, knowing that it was just the beginning of a journey filled with possibility, connection, and hope. The legacy of his grandfather and the stories of those who had come before him would endure, thriving in the hearts of those who dared to remember, to share, and to honor the past. As the vibrant colors of spring began to blossom around the community, anticipation for the Legacy Festival grew. Nolan felt a surge of pride and responsibility, knowing this event would be a celebration of their shared history, a time to honor those who had come before while also forging new connections for the future. The festival promised to be a tapestry of culture, woven together through stories, music, and the collective spirit of the community. In the weeks leading up to the festival, Nolan worked tirelessly to organize every detail. He reached out to local artists, musicians, and storytellers, inviting them to share their talents and experiences. The response was overwhelmingly positive, and as families signed up to contribute food, crafts, and performances, the excitement in the air became palpable. Each participant brought not just their offerings but a piece of their history, a reflection of the diverse threads that made up the fabric of their community. As the festival date approached, Nolan dedicated himself to finalizing logistics. He coordinated with volunteers, ensuring that tents, tables, and chairs were set up in the park where the festival would take place. The truck, now a beloved symbol of their journey, would serve as the centerpiece, a reminder of their roots and the stories that had brought them together. It gleamed under the sun, a beacon of hope and connection. On the morning of the festival, the sun rose bright and clear, casting a warm glow over the town. Nolan arrived at the park early, his heart racing with a mixture of excitement and nerves. He watched as families began to set up their booths, showcasing homemade crafts, baked goods, and cultural displays. Colorful banners danced in the gentle breeze, welcoming everyone to the event. As guests began to arrive, Nolan found himself enveloped in the warmth of community. Familiar faces greeted him with smiles, and laughter echoed as children ran around, their faces painted in bright colors. The energy was infectious, and he could feel the spirit of togetherness radiating from the crowd. Throughout the morning, various activities unfolded. Local musicians performed on a makeshift stage, their melodies filling the air with joy. People gathered around storytelling circles, eager to share tales of their heritage and dreams for the future. Nolan marveled at how the festival had transformed into a living testament to the spirit of their community. As the afternoon sun began to dip, Nolan took a moment to step away from the festivities. He found a quiet spot beneath a grand oak tree, allowing himself to reflect on how far they had come. The truck stood proudly nearby, a symbol of their journey, a reminder of the stories that had brought them together, and the bonds that had grown stronger over time. Suddenly, he felt a gentle presence beside him. It was Mr. Jenkins, an older gentleman who had shared many stories of his days working on the assembly line. "Nolan, you've outdone yourself," he said, his voice filled with warmth. "This festival brings back so many memories. It's a reminder that we are more than just a collection of individual stories. We are a community. Nolan smiled, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. I think it's important for us to remember where we came from while also looking forward. Our stories shape our future. The man nodded thoughtfully. You're right. And you're carrying that legacy forward for all of us. Your grandfather would be proud. The words resonated deeply within Nolan, and he felt a wave of emotion wash over him, a blend of gratitude and responsibility. As the sun began to set, casting a warm orange glow over the festival, Nolan took to the stage to address the crowd. He looked out at the sea of faces, familiar and new, each one holding a piece of the community's history. Thank you all for being here today, he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. This festival is a celebration of our stories, our resilience, and our dreams for the future. Together, we are stronger, and together, we can honor the legacy of those who came before us. As he spoke, he could see nods of agreement and smiles among the crowd. He continued, sharing anecdotes from the past, highlighting the contributions of those who had built the community. Let's remember that our strength lies in our connections to one another. Let's keep sharing our stories, our laughter, and our hopes. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Nolan felt a rush of warmth as he realized how deeply they had all come together. The festival culminated in a shared meal, families gathering around tables filled with delicious dishes representing their diverse backgrounds. Laughter and conversation flowed freely, and as darkness fell, the stars twinkled overhead, mirroring the glow of the festival lights. As the night progressed, a local band began to play upbeat tunes and people took to the dance floor celebrating the spirit of unity and joy. Nolan joined in, laughing and dancing with friends and family, feeling the weight of his grandfather's legacy behind him. He knew that the stories he had worked to preserve would continue to thrive within the hearts of everyone present. After the music slowed, Nolan gathered everyone for one final story. He wanted to create a moment of reflection, a shared acknowledgement of the journey they had all undertaken together. As we wrap up this beautiful day, I invite anyone who wants to share a short memory or a hope for the future to take this time, he said, encouraging participation. A hush fell over the crowd as people looked at one another, contemplating the invitation. Slowly, a few brave souls stepped forward. A woman shared her memory of working side by side with Nolan's grandfather, recalling how his laughter had brightened even the hardest days. Another man spoke of the importance of community and overcoming challenges, emphasizing how they had all stood together during tough times. One young boy who had attended many storytelling events with his family stood up with a shy smile. I want to be a storyteller when I grow up, he announced, his voice shaking slightly. I want to tell everyone about our town and all the cool things we do together. The crowd erupted in applause, the joy radiating from the moment encapsulating the essence of the festival. As the evening wound down, Nolan took a moment to reflect on the day. He looked around at the smiling faces, the laughter that filled the air, and the connections that had deepened. They were not just sharing stories, they were creating a living narrative that would carry on for generations. As families began to leave, Nolan felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He understood that his journey was not just about preserving his grandfather's legacy, but about nurturing the community's identity and fostering a space where memories could thrive. He looked around at the smiling faces, the laughter echoing in his ears, and he knew that this was just the beginning. With a heart full of gratitude, Nolan resolved to continue nurturing the spirit of connection and storytelling in their community. The truck would remain not only a vessel of history, but also a symbol of hope for the future. He was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, knowing that together they would honor the past and build a brighter tomorrow. The legacy of his grandfather, and all those who had come before, would endure, thriving in the hearts of everyone who dared to remember, share, and celebrate the stories that brought them together. As the last of the festival lights dimmed and the night settled softly around the community, Nolan felt a profound sense of peace. He had not only created an event, He had helped weave a deeper sense of belonging and purpose among those who called this town home. The connections formed that day would resonate for years to come, shaping their community's identity and reinforcing the bonds of fellowship that tied them all together. Driving home, he looked at the stars shining brightly overhead, each one a flicker of possibility, a reminder of the stories yet to be told. Nolan's heart swelled with pride as he thought of the road ahead. The journey of storytelling would continue, and he was eager to see where it would lead next. As the soft hues of dawn broke over the small town, Nolan awoke with a sense of renewed purpose. The Legacy Festival had been a resounding success, but he knew that the journey of honoring his grandfather's legacy was far from over. The connections made during the festival were just the beginning of a new chapter for both him and the community. Nolan sat at his kitchen table, a steaming cup of coffee in hand, reflecting on the stories shared and the faces he had seen illuminated by joy and laughter. There was a feeling in the air, a sense of unity and hope that was palpable. He began to jot down ideas for future gatherings, wanting to build on the momentum they had created. As he thought about the next steps, he realized that storytelling had a profound impact on the younger generation. He envisioned a mentorship program where older community members could share their stories with the youth, teaching them the value of history and the power of connection. It could be a way to bridge the gap between generations, enabling a deeper understanding of their shared past. Excited by his idea, Nolan reached out to local schools and community centers to gauge interest. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Teachers and parents alike recognized the importance of instilling a sense of pride and belonging in the younger generation. They understood that by sharing their stories, they could provide context and meaning to the lives of the children growing up in their town. With the groundwork laid, Nolan organized a series of workshops over the coming weeks. Local elders would share their life experiences, and students would be encouraged to ask questions, listen, and even share their own stories. The objective was clear: to foster an environment where storytelling became a communal practice, enriching their lives and reinforcing their ties to one another. The first workshop was held in the community center, and Nolan felt a mixture of anticipation and nervousness as he set up the room. He arranged chairs in a circle, creating an inviting space for dialogue. Local elders began to arrive, each bringing with them unique stories and experiences, ready to share their wisdom. As the students trickled in, Nolan greeted them warmly, encouraging them to feel comfortable and open-minded. He introduced the elders, explaining the purpose of the workshop. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement as the elders began to share their stories, tales of their childhood, their families, and the challenges they overcame. Each story painted a vivid picture of their lives, filled with laughter, tears, and invaluable lessons. The students listened intently, captivated by the rich tapestry of experiences being shared. One elderly woman spoke about her family's struggles during the Great Depression, detailing how they banded together to support one another. Her words resonated deeply, and Nolan could see the students processing the information, connecting it to their own lives. After the elders shared their stories, Nolan opened the floor for discussion. Students asked questions, eager to learn more about the past. "What did you do for fun?" one boy asked, genuinely curious. "How did you find hope during hard times?" another girl inquired, her eyes wide with wonder. The elders answered with warmth and honesty, recounting tales of simple joys, friendship, and resilience. The dialogue that unfolded was rich and meaningful, bridging the gap between generations. Nolan felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him, knowing that they were fostering a culture of storytelling that would thrive for years to come. As the workshops continued, the community began to blossom with new life. Families became more engaged, coming together in shared efforts to document their stories. Some started writing them down, while others recorded oral histories, capturing the essence of their lives. It was a collective effort that united the town, reinforcing the importance of their shared narrative. The mentorship program grew beyond Nolan's expectations. Students began creating projects about their findings, presenting them at school assemblies and community events. The elders shared in their pride, attending the presentations and offering feedback, further deepening the bonds that had formed. One afternoon, as he was preparing for the next workshop, Nolan received a call from the local library. They wanted to collaborate on a community archive project, aiming to preserve the stories shared during the workshops. "This could be a wonderful opportunity to give life to our history," the librarian said enthusiastically. "We want to ensure these stories are accessible for future generations." Nolan's heart soared at the idea. Not only would this project help in preserving the stories, but it would also create a resource for the community, an archive where tales of resilience, hope, and connection could be stored for years to come. He eagerly agreed to collaborate, excited about the opportunity to expand the impact of their storytelling initiative. As the weeks turned into months, the community continued to thrive. The storytelling workshops and mentorship programs became cherished traditions, interwoven into the fabric of their lives. The truck, once merely a nostalgic relic, now stood as a powerful symbol of unity, embodying the spirit of the stories being shared. Nolan reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point, feeling a sense of pride in the collective efforts of the community. He had witnessed the transformation that storytelling could bring, how it could heal wounds, foster understanding, and create bonds that spanned generations. The legacy of his grandfather was alive and well, thriving in the stories that were being told. As the seasons changed and the world outside blossomed, Nolan knew that their journey was only just beginning. He felt the weight of responsibility to carry forward the stories of those who had come before him, ensuring that the spirit of connection and resilience would flourish for generations to come. With renewed determination, he embraced the path ahead, ready to nurture the legacy of storytelling that had taken root in their hearts and homes. The future was bright, filled with potential, and he was eager to see where it would lead. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the small town, Nolan reflected on the incredible transformation that had taken place since the Legacy Festival. The sense of unity and connection among the community was palpable, and Nolan knew it was time to build on that momentum. Inspired by the enthusiasm of the young boy who aspired to be a storyteller, he decided to compile a collection of stories from the community, a testament to their resilience and shared experiences. Nolan reached out to participants from the storytelling workshops, encouraging them to contribute their narratives. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Families were eager to share their memories, anecdotes, and reflections. Over the next few months, Nolan dedicated his evenings to recording their voices, capturing the raw essence of their experiences. As the collection began to take shape, he enlisted the help of local artists and photographers to visually enhance the project. He wanted the book to reflect the community spirit, incorporating imagery that showcased cherished landmarks and the contributors themselves. The project became a collaborative effort, uniting the town through creativity. Once the first draft was complete, Nolan organized a gathering at the community center to share their progress. Families filled the room, buzzing with anticipation. As he read excerpts aloud, he could see pride shining on their faces. They were not just stories. They were pieces of their collective identity being intertwined into a beautiful tapestry. "This is more than a book," Nolan said, his voice filled with emotion. "It's a celebration of who we are, our past, and the inspiration for our future." The crowd erupted in applause, and he felt gratitude wash over him. They were preserving their narratives, creating a legacy that would resonate through generations. As the publishing date approached, excitement filled the air. The community planned a launch event filled with storytelling, music, and art, transforming the center into a vibrant gallery. On launch day, Nolan greeted families at the entrance, the walls adorned with photographs and excerpts from the book. Local musicians played uplifting tunes, setting a celebratory tone. As people mingled, laughter echoed through the center. Nolan felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing the project had not only preserved their stories but also strengthened their bonds. As the sun began to set, he took to the stage to address the crowd. "Thank you for being here today," he said, his heart swelling with pride. "This book reflects our spirit, a testament to the stories that connect us and the love that binds us together. Applause erupted, and Nolan felt joy radiate from the crowd. The launch was more than a celebration of a book. It symbolized their collective journey. Each story shared, every connection made, had woven a rich tapestry of community. As the day closed, he felt deep hope for the future. The stories would continue to be told, echoing through generations, ensuring that their legacy thrived.